Is it any wonder that there is a lack of trust that does exist in society towards the elite whom we call our leaders? Leadership has spawned from a very ancient realization of the past. This was reestablished most dramatically as the Egyptian region, when survivors of the cataclysm formed a new society and eventually unified the land before a collapse of the dynastic Egyptians gave birth to other royal establishments across Europe and indeed the world. And if these families still hold a direct blood link back through the ages to the time of the re-established empire, then the consequences are mind-boggling, because this would prove a continuation of a people that history tells us aren't in existence anymore. The stories of the past are no doubt loose interpretation of events that took place, but where do we look on this planet today to gain knowledge of this great secret that is being kept out of the public domain? Well, what if we were to tell you that the oldest stories in the world, ones that have been remembered orally for hundreds of generations, and ones that fit nearly into the point we are trying to make? Wait till you hear this. Sick of hearing about the ancient cataclysm yet? Remember, this was a unique global event. Future events like the Santorini eruption were close to insignificant in comparison. And, of course, the Santorini eruption gives us much food for thought to consider, but not to be confused by the early global event that hurt every living being on this planet. The survivors had to deal with trauma that affected their minds. We are the ancestors of the survivors, and therefore this trauma is still instilled in our minds today. Our struggles to remember, the confusion regarding the past, our emotions that we can't always control, these are the results of this cataclysm. The oldest stories regarding these world events, remember, a comet strike would have caused otherworldly events, and of course, a comet during perihelion of the sun would have caused the sun to flare, and Earth-directed coronal mass ejection caused by a comet at perihelion would have scorched our planet before this initial comet impact, and we see signs of this at the Colossi of Memnon, for example. So scorching would have occurred by this comet event, then the impact, then the flood. The sun would have been blocked out, volcanoes would have erupted everywhere, and planet Earth was virtually uninhabitable. Ancient Earthlings, in some cases, apparently knew this was coming. They built massive underground chambers capable of housing enormous amounts of people, and we call this the Ark of Noah. Underground chambers in Turkey are probably Noah's Ark. we should be looking into the Mount Ararat for these chambers, as this is where the Ark is said to have been and in the foothills of this mountain. Agriculture just happens to have been established here, and maybe this is what the handbag of the gods represented. Repopulating our crops after seawater had dried out all the harvests of the planet, forcing us to sow seeds the world over as we fought to survive. And in Australia, the Aboriginal people were also fighting this survival. The oldest stories come from these people. The ancient Australians tell of a time long ago when 4 giant beings arrived in Australia. One of them, apparently, flew into a volcano shortly before it exploded, suggesting yet again what we already know. The cataclysm on humanity was a deliberate action, and the Aboriginal people of southwestern Oz still tell of this event. Described as the oldest story ever told, this is still being told today. Budgebin formed when a whole host of similar volcanoes collapsed to form a super volcano. The interesting point here is that these stories must now be over 10,000 years old and are still being told. In the 1940s, an axe was found at the location of the volcano. This was beneath the volcanic rocks, and this proves that humans lived here before the volcano exploded, meaning these stories put the Aboriginals in an eye view of the events. The dating method, which relies on the well-established technique of measuring the radioactive decay of potassium-40 into argon-40 over time, suggests both volcanoes formed about 37,000 years ago. What's more, both seem to be a style that can grow from nothing to peaks tens of meters high in a matter of days to months. The sudden dual eruptions may have made a big impression on the humans who were living in the area at the time. The story of the 4 giants are eerily similar to the accounts of the beings who from heaven came to earth, the descent of Inanna into the underworld. Inanna was the queen of heaven. She came from heaven to earth and went straight to the underworld to visit her sister, who was the queen of the dead. And of course, these deities are also said to have warned Noah of the coming apocalypse, hence the preparation in what is today Turkey. This volcano has not erupted on any major scale since this initial event, and because of this, it further points out the timeline of the stories that are being told dates all the way back through the ages. But how is this even possible? Our memories, after all, were affected by trauma, and we have forgotten, right? So why can the Aboriginals remember? Aboriginal people remember the dream time by allowing their mind to remember in a meaningful but not a physical way. This allows the recollection of thoughts, cultivating their thoughts in works of art and exploring the happenings of the past in an unconscious way, but one that they believe in. The dream time is made up of events that stood out in history of these people, and this includes this account of the deity and the volcano. DNA samples taken from modern Aboriginals suggest that there has been a continuation of these people in Australia for well over 50,000 years. The increasing evidence points to migration not being possible for the ancient Australians, so they were forced to stay there. And this is probably why these oral traditions have worked so well on this continent. A trust in the stories and a duty to tell the next generations over thousands of years may hold answers to who we are. This might be the key locked in the human mind. If subconscious answers exist, they still exist, and for all time. They have been passed throughout our collective species without us knowing about it, and they are still there. We are beginning to scratch the surface. The longevity of ancient Australian Aboriginal stories of tens of thousands of years old are mind-blowing, and this is something we are just beginning to understand as a people. The new research, which appears in Journal, the Geological Society of America, reveals that these oral traditions of the Aboriginals of Australia are in fact the oldest stories found anywhere in the world, and we just wanted to bring this to your attention in this video. Let us know what you are thinking, and as always, thank you for watching.